Good morning, students. Say your prayer. Thank you. நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர், நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் இருந்த முறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர், நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் இருந்த முறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். நான் ஒரு நல்லாசிரியர், நான் உங்களுக்கு தாயாகவும் தந்தையாகவும் இருந்த முறையாக அன்போடு கல்வியை போதிப்பேன். Okay, students, take your social science book. Yeah, take page number 77. So today we will move to next unit in history. So the Middle Ages. Yeah. So till now we discussed about the ancient history. Yeah. So ancient history which covers India, China, and also the European countries, especially Rome and Greece. Yeah. So in 5th unit we discussed about the classical world, so which include Rome and Greece, and the rise of Christianity in Europe. Okay, so so historians divided the period, historical period, into three. So first is ancient history, so which we have discussed up to 5th lesson. Yeah, then Middle Ages, then modern history. Yeah, so Middle Ages we will discuss from this lesson. Yeah, so modern history, so which includes the advent of Europeans to Asian and African country. Yeah, then and the establishment of colonies in Asia and Africa. So that covers the modern history. Yeah. So Middle Ages. So what are the changes? So what are the socio-economic condition? Yeah. So what are the dynasties that existed in Middle Ages in world? Yeah. So we discussed it in this lesson. Okay. So the Middle Ages. Yeah. So learning objectives. So what are you going to learn in this lesson? The Middle Ages. So first to learn about the empires of China during the reign of Tang, Sung and Yuan dynasty. So to learn about the empires of China during the reign of Tang, Sung and Yuan dynasty. Then to understand the evolution of Japanese society under the Fujiwara family and Kamakura shogunate. So they were the ruling families. Yeah, so Fujiwara and Kamakura shogunate. Yeah, so they were like the ruling families. So they were the family which ruled the Japanese kingdom. Okay, so to understand the evolution of Japanese society under the Fujiwara family and the Kamakura shogunate, then to trace the background for the birth of Islam. Yeah, so in the Middle Ages, so there was a religion, so which was born in Asia, yeah, so in West Asia, so that is Islam. Yeah, then to acquire knowledge of Arab and Ottoman Empire and their contribution to the spread of Islamic culture. Come on. To acquire knowledge of Arab and Ottoman Empire and their contribution to the spread of Islamic culture. Then to analyze the characteristics of feudalism in the Middle Ages. Yeah, so to analyze the characteristics of feudalism. Yeah, so what is meant by feudalism? So feudalism means a social system which existed in the Middle Ages in Europe, in which people worked and fought for a person who owned land and received land and protection from him in return. Yeah, so social system which existed in Middle Ages. Yeah, so feudalism is a social system which existed in Middle Ages in Europe, in which people worked and fought for a person. Yeah, so the people work and fought for a person who owned land and received land and protection from him in return. Yeah, so social system, feudalism is a social system which existed in Middle Ages in Europe, in which people worked and fought for a person who owned land and received land and protection from him, so in return. Yeah. Then to understand the relationship between the state, that is the ruling government, and the church in the Middle Ages. Okay, so learning objectives. First to learn about the empires of China, so during the reign of Tang, Sung and Yuan dynasty. Yeah. Then to understand the evolution of Japanese society under the Fujiwara family and the Kamakura shogunate. Then to trace the background for the birth of Islam, so Islam religion. Then to acquire the knowledge of Arab and Ottoman Empire and their contribution to the spread of Islamic culture. Then to analyze the characteristics of feudalism in the Middle Ages. Then finally to understand the relationship between the state and the church in the Middle Ages. So to understand the relationship between the state, that is the government, that is the rulers, and the church in the Middle Ages. So historians call the period between the end of the Roman Empire in 476 AD. So historians call the period between the end of the Roman Empire in 476 AD and the capture of Constantinople. So capture of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks in the year 1453. So in last lesson we have completed the lesson that Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople in 1453 AD from the Byzantine emperors. Okay, so the historians called the period between the end of the Roman Empire. So the end of the Roman Empire ended in the year 476 AD. So the end of the Roman Empire in 476 AD and the capture of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks in the 1453 as the Middle Ages. So the Middle Ages has been further classified as early Middle Age, Central or High Middle Age and later Middle Age. Historians call the period between the end of the Roman Empire in 476 AD and the capture of Constantinople by the Turks in 1453 AD as the Middle Ages. So the Middle Ages has been further classified as early Middle Age, Central or High Middle Age and later Middle Age. In the early Middle Ages, so approximately 5th to 10th century, Christianity followed by Islam began to establish themselves as a dominant religion of continental Europe. So the Middle Ages was classified as early, central and later. In the early Middle Ages, so approximately between 5th to 10th century AD, Christianity followed by Islam began to establish themselves as the dominant religion of continental Europe. Then in the central or high Middle Ages, it witnessed a rapid development, that is fast development marked by territorial expansion, demographic and urban growth. So demographic means it's related with the people, it's related with the population. So marked by territorial expansion, demographic and urban growth and restructuring of secular and religious institution. So restructuring, so change in structure of secular. So secular means non-religious and religious institution. So in the early Middle Ages, so Christianity followed by Islam began to establish as the strong religion, so dominant religion of the continental Europe. Then in the central or high Middle Ages, it witnessed the rapid development marked by the territorial expansion, demographic and urban growth and restructuring of secular and religious institutions. So the history of the Arab civilization that began a little later than the history of Byzantium covers a period roughly from 630 AD to 1300, which was known as the Saracenic civilization. So the history of Arab civilization, which began a little later than the history of Byzantium, so Byzantine Empire. So that covers a period roughly between from 630 AD to 1300, and it was known as the Saracenic civilization. It was the center of new religion, and its impact on Christian Europe was responsible for the revolutionary social and intellectual changes. The history of Arab civilization that began a little later than the history of Byzantium covers a period roughly from 630 AD to 1300, known as the Saracenic civilization. It was the center of a new religion, and its impact, so the Saracenic civilization impact on Christian Europe was responsible for the revolutionary social and intellectual changes. Seljuk Turks, so who were a tribe of Tatars. So Tatar means a member of the combined forces of Central Asian people, including Mongols and Turks. So Seljuk Turks, so who were the tribal of Tatars from Central Asia. So they established a powerful empire in Persia. So Seljuk Turks established a powerful empire in Persia. So their period, so their reign was one of the great progress in literature, art and architecture. So the Seljuk Turk period was a great progress in literature, art and architecture. Similarly, the Ottoman Turks, so who moved Anatolia, that is Asia Minor, that is the west of Asia, and established an independent empire, contributed to science and technology in a big way. So the Seljuk Turks, so who were a tribe of Tatars from Central Asia, established a powerful empire in Persia. So their reign was one of the great progress. So great progress in literature, art and architecture. Similarly, the Ottoman Turks, so who moved Anatolia, so that is they captured the Constantinople. So they established their empire in the eastern part of Europe, so eastern part of Roman Empire, and also Asia Minor. Yeah. So they established an independent empire there and contributed to science and technology in a big way. So Seljuk Turks, they contributed to literature, art and architecture, while the Ottoman Turks, so they contributed to science and technology. So the historians call the period between the end of Roman Empire 476 AD to 1453. So the capture of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks in the year 1453 as the Middle Ages. Yeah, so during this period only, so Christianity and Islam so became the dominant religion, and this period, so the Middle Ages, so marked by the rapid development and territorial expansion, demographic and urban growth, and restructuring of secular and religious institutions. Yeah, so here the Arab civilization began a little later than the history of Byzantium, covers a period roughly between 630 to 1300 AD. Yeah. Then the Seljuk Turks and Ottoman Turks. Yeah, so Seljuk Turks, they established a powerful empire in Persia, while the Ottoman Turks established an independent empire in the Asia Minor. Okay, so Seljuk Turks contributed a lot to literature, art and architecture, while the Ottoman Turks contributed a lot to science and technology. So next, East Asia in the Middle Ages. So East Asia means it includes the countries in Asia continent in East. Okay, so Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, so are some of the countries which are located in East of Asia. So in this class we will discuss about, in this lesson we will discuss about China and Japan. Yeah, so China and Japan in the Middle Ages. Okay, so first China, so Tang dynasty, so which ruled between 618 to 907 AD. Yes, 618 to 907 AD. So Shu dynasty collapsed in 40 years. So because of the financial burden imposed by public works like the Grand Canal and the expensive wars waged to conquer northern part of Korea. Yeah, so Shu dynasty so collapsed in 40 years. So why means, so because of the financial burden. Yeah, so they faced the financial burden. Yeah. So why they faced the financial burden? So because they involved, so they constructed some important public works, so like the Grand Canal, so which cost more, and also they involved in expensive wars to conquer northern part of Korea. So Shu dynasty so collapsed in 40 years, so because of the financial burden imposed by public works like the Grand Canal and the expensive war waged to conquer northern part of Korea. So the Tang dynasty rose from the widespread rebellion that took place to establish a strong centralized empire. So Shu dynasty so collapsed in 40 years. So because of the financial burden. So because they constructed, so they undergo a lot of public works, so including the construction of Grand Canal, and also they involved in expensive wars. So like conquering of northern part of Korea. So these things so make them financially weak. So there was rebellion, so widespread rebellion, which help the Tang dynasty to rise to power. Okay, so Li Yuan, who organized the rebellion, made Yang Yu the emperor of China. So Li Yuan, so who organized the rebellion, made Yang Yu as the emperor of China. As Yang Yu was killed by one of his royal officials, the chancellor Li Yuan proclaimed himself as the emperor. So Li Yuan, who organized the rebellion against the Shu dynasty, made Yang Yu as the emperor of China. But Yang Yu, so he was killed by one of his royal officials. So Li Yuan, so who was the chancellor, he proclaimed, so he officially declared himself as the emperor of China. So several hundred kilometers of the Great Wall were rebuilt along the northwest frontier. So you know about the Great Wall of China. So it was reconstructed. So it was rebuilt along the northwest frontier. So military campaigns extended the empire influence into Korea in the east and as far as the border of Persia and Indochina in the west. So military campaigns. So military campaigns which helped the empire to extend its influence into Korea in the east and as far as the borders of Persia and Indochina in the west. So China, Shu dynasty collapsed within 40 years. So because of the financial burden imposed by public works like the Grand Canal and the expensive wars waged to conquer northern part of Korea. So the Tang dynasty rose from the widespread rebellion that took place to establish a strong centralized empire. Li Yuan, who organized the rebellion, made Yang Yu the emperor of China. As Yang Yu was killed by one of his royal officials, the Chancellor Li Yuan proclaimed himself as the emperor. So several 100 kilometers of the Great Wall were rebuilt along the northwest frontier. So military campaigns extended the empire's influence into Korea in the east and as far as the borders of Persia and Indochina in the west. So Great Wall of China. So between 8th and 7th century BC, the warring states in China built defensive walls to protect themselves from the enemies from the north. So between 8th and 7th centuries BC, so before Christ. So the warring states in China, so China was divided into many states. So each state have war with others. So the warring states in China built defensive walls to protect themselves from the enemies from north. So during Qin dynasty, that is Qin dynasty, the separate walls were connected and consequently the wall stretched from east to west for about 5,000 kilometers. So during the Qin dynasty, the separate walls were connected and consequently the wall stretched from east to west for about 5,000 kilometers. So this wall, considered to be one of the wonders of the world, served to keep nomadic tribes out. So this wall, considered to be one of the wonders of the world, it helped to keep the nomadic tribes out. The wall was further extended and strengthened by the succeeding dynasties. So the wall was further extended and strengthened by the succeeding dynasties. Now it is 6,700 kilometers in length. So the length of Great Wall of China was 6,700 kilometers. So Tang dynasty. So the Tang dynasty undertook enormous public work. So Tang dynasty undertook enormous public work. Yes, already Yu dynasty, it falls so because of the financial burden imposed by public works. So in the same way, so Tang dynasty, it also undertook enormous public work. So two capital cities, Boyang and Chang'an, were built. So Tang dynasty, so constructed two capital cities, so Boyang and Chang'an. Then scholar officials and trained in Confucius philosophy. So scholar officials, they were trained in Confucius philosophy. So who was Confucius? One of the greatest philosopher of China, who lived in ancient China. So scholar officials trained in Confucius philosophy were appointed to counterbalance the land-owning aristocratic class. So scholar officials trained in Confucius philosophy were appointed to counterbalance. So counterbalance means a fact having the opposite effect to that of another, preventing it from exercising a disproportionate influence. So counterbalance means a fact having the opposite effect to that of another. Then aristocrat, so a member of the aristocracy, that is people born in the highest social class who have special titles. So scholar officials, they were trained in Confucius philosophy, were appointed to counterbalance the land-owning aristocratic class. So land was divided into small peasant holdings. So land was divided into small peasant holdings. As a result, the agricultural surplus went to the state as taxes and not to the aristocrat as rent. So land was divided into small peasant holdings. So because of this, the agricultural surplus went to the state, went to the government as the taxes and not to the aristocrat, that is high class people, as rent. So state monopoly of salt and tea added to its revenue. So state monopoly of salt, that is salt and tea, so was fully controlled by state only. So there is no private participation. So state monopoly of salt and tea added to its revenue. So Tang dynasty undertook enormous public works. So two capitals, Boyang and Chang'an, were built. So scholar officials, so they were trained in Confucius philosophy, were appointed in order to counterbalance the land-owning aristocratic class. So in order to counterbalance the land-owning aristocratic class, so scholar officials were appointed and trained in Confucius philosophy. So land was divided into small peasant holdings. So as a result, the agricultural surplus went to the state as a taxes and not to the aristocrat as rent. So state monopoly of salt and tea added to its revenue. Next is the Sung dynasty, so which ruled between 960 AD to 1279 AD. So Tang dynasty ruled between 618 to 907 AD. So Sung dynasty 960 to 1279 AD. So the rebellion of hard-pressed peasantry. So the rebellion of hard-pressed peasantry. That means so peasants were cruelly pressed. Okay, the peasants were cruelly treated. Yeah, so under the leadership of Hung Chau, dealt a death knell to the tottering Tang Empire. Yeah, so the rebellion of hard-pressed peasantry. Yeah, so hard-pressed peasantry means, so the peasants, that is the small landholders, were in poverty. So they were in very worst condition. So because of the leadership of Hung Chau, yeah, so which dealt a death knell. Yeah, so death knell means an event that means that the end or destruction of something will come. Yeah, so death knell means an event which means that the end or destruction of something will come soon. Yeah, so the rebellion of hard-pressed peasantry under the leadership of Hung Chau dealt a death knell to the tottering. So tottering means, so to be weak and seem likely to fall. Weak Tang Empire. The empire split into 5 rival states until it was reunited under a new dynasty, Sung. So the rebellion of hard-pressed peasantry under the leadership of Hung Chau. Hard-pressed peasantry. So under a rebellion under the leadership of Hung Chau dealt a death knell to the tottering Tang Empire. So the empire was split into 5 rival states. So until it was again reunited under a new dynasty called as Sung. Trade and industry flourished during the reign of Sung dynasty. So trade and industry developed during the reign of Sung dynasty. Iron and steel industries became highly organized. So during Sung dynasty, iron and steel industry became highly organized. So China was famous for iron during that time. So the quantity of iron China produced in 1078 AD exceeded 114,000 tons. So in 1078 AD, so China produced 114,000 tons of iron. But England so produced only 68,000 tons even in 1788. So even in modern history, so England, in the modern world, England produced only 68,000 tons. But China in the year 1088 AD itself, that is in the Middle Ages itself, so the China produced 114,000 tons of iron. So China excelled in ceramics and porcelain making. So China excelled in ceramics and porcelain making. So this technique was not known to Europe for another 700 years. So the technique of making ceramics and the porcelain was not known to Europe for another 700 years. So gunpowder was in use by 1044. So they used it. So Chinese, so they only invented gunpowder. It was in use by 1044. So China possessed printed books half a millennium before Europe, that is 500 years before Europe. So China possessed printed books. So Chinese so used printed books. So they also invented paper also. So they possessed printed books half a millennium. So millennium means 1 millennium, 1,000 years. So half a millennium means so 500 years before Europe. The fall of Sung dynasty. So Tang dynasty, so followed by Sung dynasty. So what caused the fall of Sung dynasty? So Sung period was also a period of great prosperity to the land owning class, officials and rich merchants. So Sung period, it was a period of great prosperity to the land owning class, officials and rich merchants. The peasants, so by contrast, had to suffer grinding poverty. So the peasants, so they were in poverty. So they were in grinding poverty. So grinding poverty means so extreme level of poverty. So before any internal crisis could develop, there were 2 external invasions. So already the Tang dynasty and Shu dynasty, so they fell. So because of the peasants' revolt. So because the peasants were in very poor condition. So the Sung dynasty, so before any internal crisis could develop, there were 2 external invasions. So from the north that ended the Sung dynasty. So initially the Tang dynasty and Shu dynasty collapsed so because of the peasants' revolt only. So normally. But Sung dynasty, so there is a little difference. So before any internal crisis, so before any rebellion occurs, so there were 2 external invasions. So from the north, which ended the Sung dynasty. So the Mongols, so they established their rule in China in the name of Yuan dynasty. So the Mongols established their rule in China in the name of Yuan dynasty. Yuan dynasty, so ruled between 1279 to 1368 AD. The Mongols who overran, so who defeated Persia and the whole of Central Asia, did not spare China either. So the Mongols who overran Persia and the whole of Central Asia, they did not left China also. So they attack and capture China also. So Mangu Khan so became the great Khan in 1252, who appointed Kublai Khan the governor of China. So Mangu Khan, who became the great Khan in 1252. So he was a Mongol. So he is Mongols. So Genghis Khan, so the dynasty of Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan dynasty. So Mangu Khan, who became the great Khan in 1252, appointed Kublai Khan as the governor of China. So the Mongol presence from one end of Eurasia to other played a key role in spreading Chinese technological advances to the less developed societies in the West. So the Mongols' presence from one end of Eurasia to other. So you can see in this map. So the Mongol Empire, it extended from East Asia to the West Asia. So a big empire in Middle Ages. So the Mongol presence from one end of Eurasia to other played a key role in spreading Chinese technological advances to the less developed societies in the West. So though the Mongol court in Beijing, so Beijing, so the modern capital of China. So though the Mongol court in Beijing impressed a foreigner like Marco Polo, the poverty of peasantry continued. So already in Sung dynasty, the peasants were in grinding poverty. In Yuan dynasty also, so the poverty of peasantry continued. So the Mongol court in Beijing impressed foreigners like Marco Polo. So there were revolt of religious sect and secret societies. So there were revolt of religious sect and secret societies. So finally, the leader of Red Turban, Chu Yuan Chang. So finally, the leader of one of the secret society, Red Turbans, Chu Yuan Chang, captured the Mongol capital, Beijing, and proclaimed himself as the emperor in the year 1369. So finally, the leader of Red Turban, Chu Yuan Chang, so captured the Mongol capital, Beijing, and proclaimed himself as the emperor in 1369. Then the Ming Empire, so 1368 to 1644 AD. So Ming Empire, which replaced the Mongol Empire, consciously discouraged industry and foreign trade in order to concentrate on agriculture. So the Ming Empire replaced Mongol Empire. So the Mongols who overran Persia and the whole of Central Asia, they captured China also. So Mangu Khan, so who became the great Khan in 1252 AD, appointed Kublai Khan as the governor of China. So Mangu Khan, who became the great Khan in 1252 AD, so he appointed Kublai Khan as the governor of China. So the leader of Red Turbans, Chu Yuan, captured the Mongol capital, Beijing, and proclaimed himself as the emperor in 1369 AD. So he established the Ming Empire. So the Ming Empire, which replaced the Mongol Empire consciously. So it discouraged the industry and foreign trade because they wanted to concentrate on agriculture. So this resulted economically China lagging behind in the 16th century. So till Yuan dynasty, so China was advanced when compared to Western European countries. So China was more advanced. So because of the Mongol Empire, so Chinese technology were spread to the countries in the West. But the Ming Empire, so they discouraged industry and foreign trade in order to concentrate on agriculture. So this resulted economically China lagging behind in the 16th century. Other parts of Eurasia, so building on the techniques of Chinese, began to march ahead. So other parts of Eurasia, so that is between Europe and Asia, so they built on the techniques of the Chinese, so they began to march ahead when compared to China. So next, Japan. So what do you know about Japan? So which is called as the land of rising sun. So Japan is called as the land of rising sun, so which is in east of Asia. So we discussed it till now about China. So first the Tang dynasty, then Sung dynasty, then Yuan dynasty, then Ming Empire. So now we will move to Japan. So many of ancestors of the Japanese came from Korea and some from Malaysia. So Japan, it is an island country. So it consists of a number of islands. So many of the ancestors of the Japanese came from Korea and some from Malaysia. It was through Korea that Chinese civilization reached Yamato. So it was through Korea the Chinese civilization reached Yamato. So Yamato, the original name of Japan. So Japan, so the country also had another name. So the Japanese called themselves as Nippon. So Nippon is another name for Japan. But their old name was Yamato. So the original inhabitants of the country, that is aborigines, are known as Ainos. So the original inhabitant of Japan, that is aborigines, were known as Ainos. Then the original religion of Japan was Shinto. It was a mixture of nature and ancestor worship. So the original religion of Japan was Shinto. That is, it was a mixture of nature and ancestor worship. So Japan, so because of its position, so because of its geographical location, remained in isolation for many centuries. So this gave them the benefit of enjoying freedom from foreign invasions. So Japan remained in isolation for many centuries. So because they were surrounded by sea. So it was not possible through land attack. It was not possible to capture them through land attack. So this gave them the benefit of enjoying freedom from the foreign invasions. In Japan, Buddhism came through Korea. So Buddhism reached Japan through Korea. In Japan also, the leading families opposed and fought each other to gain power. So Japan, so they practiced the oligarchy. So simply we can say oligarchy. So oligarchy means power with a group of persons. So in Japan, so there were families. So there were ruling class families who opposed and fought each other to gain power. So their emperor Mikado was an autocrat, but a puppet in the hands of a few powerful families. So the emperor of Japan of that time was Mikado. So he was an autocrat. So autocrat means who exercises complete power. So who exercises complete full power, but he was a puppet. So puppet means a person or a group whose actions are controlled by another. So his actions were controlled by another person. So that is he was in the hands of few powerful families. The first great family that controlled the state was Soga family. So the first great family which controlled the state, which controlled the government, was the Soga family. Shotoku Taishi was the leader of that family. He made the central government strong. So in Japan, the leading families opposed and fought each other to gain power. So in Japan also there are several families, there are several ruling families, ruling classes. So they fought with each other in order to gain power. So their emperor was Mikado, who was an autocrat, but he was a puppet. He was under the control of few powerful families. So the first great family that controlled the state was the Soga family. So Shotoku Taishi, so he was the leader of that family. So he made the central government a strong one. After the death of Shotoku Taishi, his family was driven out by Nakotam no Kamatari. So after the death of Shotoku Taishi, his family was driven out by Nakotam no Kamatari, who was the founder of Fujiwara family. So after the death of Shotoku Taishi, who was the person from Soga family, he was driven out by, his family was driven out by Nakatom no Kamatari, so the founder of Fujiwara family. So Kamatari adopted many Chinese methods and made the central government further stronger. Already Shotoku Taishi made the central government stronger. So after his death, his family was driven out by Nakatom no Kamatari, who was the founder of Fujiwara family. So Kamatari family adopted many Chinese methods and made the central government further stronger. So he made Nara the capital of Japan. From 794 AD, Kyoto remained the capital for more than 1000 years until it was replaced by Tokyo. So Nakatom no Kamatari made central government stronger by adopting Chinese method. He also made Nara the capital. And from 794 AD, Kyoto, so one of the city in Japan, remained as the capital for more than 1000 years until it was replaced by Tokyo. So now the capital city of Japan was Tokyo. So Fujiwara family emperors in later years retired to monasteries and lived as monks. So Fujiwara family emperors, so they retired in later years. So at the end of their life, at the last day of their life, so they retired from the kingship and lived in monastery as monks. But they continued to exercise authority. Even though they lived in monastery as monks, they continued to exercise authority. So in Japan also, the leading family opposed and fought each other to gain power. So the first family which controlled the emperor which controlled the state was Soga family. So Shotoku Taisi was the leader. Yes, after his death, so this Soga family was driven out by Nagato no Kamatari, the founder of Fujiwara family. Yeah, so both Soga family and Fujiwara family made the central government strong. Yeah, so in the period of Fujiwara family, so Kyoto remained the capital from 784 AD for more than 1000 years. Yeah, so Fujiwara family emperors in later years retired to monasteries and lived as monks. Yeah, so during the 200-year rule of Fujiwaras, a new class of large landholders emerged. Yeah, so during the 200 years rule of Fujiwara, so Fujiwara ruled for nearly 200 years. Yeah. So during that period, a new class of large landholders emerged. Yeah. So these landholders were also military men called daimyos. Yeah. So these landholders were also called as military men. So they were called as daimyos. Yeah. So daimyos means meaning great names. That is lords. So great names lords. Yeah. The daimyos became powerful with their retainers and armies. So retainers, a servant, especially one who has been with a family for a long time. Yeah. So the daimyos who became powerful with their retainers and armies. Yeah. So out of the fight between the two chief families, the Tara and the Minamoto, Yoritomo emerged successful. Yeah. So already we have seen. So Japan, there were powerful families. Yeah, so initially the Soga family emerged powerful. Later Fujiwara family emerged powerful. Yeah, but during the period of Fujiwaras, a new class of large landholders emerged. Yeah, so these landholders are also called as military men called daimyos. Okay, so that means powerful. They became powerful with their retainer and armies. So the daimyos became powerful with their retainers and armies. They have, so the daimyos, they have their own army and they have their retainers. So retainers, a servant, especially one who has been with a family for a long time. Yeah. So there was a fight between the daimyos family. Yeah. So important them was Dara and Minamoto. Yeah. So the fight between the Taramoto and the Minamoto, Yoritomo emerged successful. Yeah. In AD 1192, the emperor gave him the high-sounding title of Sheitai Shogun. Yeah. So in AD 1192, the emperor of Japan gave Yoritomo the title, the high-sounding title of Sheitai Shogun. Yeah. So which means the barbarian subduing the great general. Yeah. So the barbarian subduing, so defeated the great general. Yeah. So the title carried full power to govern hereditarily. Yeah. So this title carried full power to govern hereditarily. Yeah. So the shogun became the real ruler. Yeah. So now the shogun became the real ruler. In this way began the ruler of shogunate. In this way began the rule of shogunate. So now Soga family followed by Fujiwara family, then it was followed by shogunate family. So shogunate so became the real ruler of Japan now. So in the fight between the Tara and Minamoto, Yoritomo emerged successful and he was given the title of Sheitai Shogun, who established the shogunate family. Yeah, so Yoritomo established his military capital at Kamakura. Yeah, so Yoritomo, so who established his military capital at Kamakura. So therefore, the first shogunate is called the Kamakura shogunate. Yeah, so Yoritomo established his military capital at Kamakura. So that's why the first shogunate was called as the Kamakura shogunate. Yeah. So Japan followed China in all spheres of life, but in its own way. Yeah, so Japan followed China in all spheres of life, but in its own way. So the emperor became a ceremonial head. So the emperor became a ceremonial head. That is hereditary. Yeah. The government was a feudal military government administered by samurai or warriors. So samurai. So who was a samurai? See, a Japanese warrior was called as samurai. Yeah. So the government was a feudal military government administered by samurai or warriors. Yeah. The Mongols, who changed the course of history in Asia and terrified Europe, were successfully repulsed by the Japanese under the shogunate. So Mongols, so already we have seen, so the Mongol Empire, it extended from East Asia, from China to West Asia. So they ruled up to Persia. So almost the whole Central Asia was under the control of Mongols. Yeah, but they were defeated. So they were successfully repulsed by the Japanese under this shogunate. Yeah. So Yoritomo established his military capital at Kamakura. So the first shogunate was called as Kamakura Shogunate. So Japan followed China in all spheres of life, but in its own way. So the emperor became a ceremonial head. The government was a feudal military government which was administered by samurai or warriors. So the Mongols, who changed the course of history in Asia and who terrified Europe, so who threatened Europe, were successfully repulsed by the Japanese under this Kamakura Shogunate. But the decline of the ruling, so Kamakura Shogunate dynasty started, and in the 1338 AD, the Kamakura Shogunate ended. So at the decline of the ruling dynasty started, and in 1338 AD, the Kamakura Shogunate ended. A new line of shogunate came to power, known as the Ashikaga Shogunate. So shogunate in Japanese, it was like an emperor. So complete control. So shogunate means title given as military dictators. So title of military dictators. So shogunate means military dictators. Okay, so Kamakura Shogunate ended. A new line of shogunate came to power, known as Ashikaga Shogunate, that lasted for 235 years. But this was a period of conflict and war. So three men ultimately rescued Japan from the prolonged civil war. So after the fall of Kamakura Shogunate, a new line of shogunate. So shogunate, so the title of military dictator, so came to power, known as Ashikaga Shogunate. So that lasted for 235 years. But during the Ashikaga Shogunate period, so there was a conflict and civil war. So three men ultimately rescued Japan from the prolonged civil war. So they were Borbunaga, a daimyo or noble, then Hideyoshi, that is a peasant, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. So Borbunaga, Hideyoshi, then Tokugawa Ieyasu. So they rescued Japan from the prolonged civil war. So by the end of 16th century, the whole of Japan was again united. So during the period of Ashikaga Shogunate, which lasted for 235 years, so there was a conflict and prolonged civil war. So three men ultimately rescued Japan from the prolonged civil war. So they were Borbunaga, Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. So they rescued Japan from this civil war, and because of them only, so Japan again united by the end of 16th century. Okay students, so today's class we discussed about the East Asia in the Middle Ages. So first we discussed about the Middle Ages, so the period between the fall of Roman Empire and the capture of Constantinople, that is 476 AD to 1453 AD is called as Middle Ages. In that we discussed about China, so the dynasties that ruled China. So first Tang dynasty, so Shu dynasty, so followed by Tang dynasty, then Sung dynasty, then it was followed by Yuan dynasty. So Yuan dynasty means the dynasty, so they established by the Mongols. So who was the famous ruler of Yuan dynasty? Kublai Khan. So he was appointed the governor of China by Mangu Khan, the Great Khan. Then finally we discussed about the Ming Empire. So during the Ming Empire only, so China economically lagged behind. Okay, then we discussed about Japan. So Japan, so many of the ancestors came from Korea and some from Malaysia. So the old name of Japan, so the original name of Japan was Yamato. Then we discussed about the ruling families. So first the Shoga family, then followed by Fujiwara family. So who was the leader of Shoga family? Shotogu Taishi. Then who driven out the Shoga family? Nakatomi no Kamatari. So who named the family founded by Nakatomi no Kamatari? Fujiwara family. Then which was the capital city of Japan during that time? Kyoto. So now the capital city of Japan was Tokyo. Then we discussed about the daimyos, so the landholders, so who were military men. Then we discussed about the fight between the two chief families, Tara and Minamoto. Then who emerged successful? Yoritomo. Name the title, so gave to them by the emperor. Shei Tai Shogun. So that means barbarian subduing great general. So then we discussed about the Yoritomo. established a new family, so called as Kamakura shogunate. Yeah. Then finally we discussed how Japan was united again by the end of 16th century. Yeah. So we discussed about China and Japan. Okay, ma? So tomorrow's class we discuss about the Islam and the rise of Islamic Empire. Okay, ma? Okay, students. So take your book. So take page number 79. So textbook reading. So read Japan fully. So page number 79 and 80. So read it fully. So that is your textbook reading. Then homework. So take page number 86. So fifth Roman letter. First question, the Great Wall of China. So take page number 78. So see the box, the Great Wall of China. So write it fully and read it well. Then also mark the detail also. So sixth Roman letter, answer the following in detail. Second question, who were the Mongols? How did they rule China? So take page number 79. So Yuan dynasty. So 1279 to 1368 AD CE. So write it fully. So the Mongols. So they were Yuan. So they established the Yuan dynasty. So this is the answer for second detail. So who were Mongols? How did they rule China? So answer in page number 79 as Yuan dynasty. So write this also. So 2 mark question 1, then detail 1. So if you have any doubt in this class, so please ask me. So thank you, students. Have a nice day.